He was 10 years old when Zed picked him up out of the mud, not metaphorically. Literally, a child lying face down in the aftermath of a massacre he had helped cause, hands white-knuckled around a broken spear, pointing the jagged end at the most dangerous assassin in Ionia, with the specific expression of someone who has decided that dying, Jacespire, is acceptable, but surrender is not. The child's eyes were wrong. Too old. Too far past the point. Corally where children's eyes are supposed to be. Zed saw what he was looking at. He extended his hand. That decision, one master choosing one student from one ruined field, set in motion a chain of events that produced either Ionia's greatest weapon or its worst catastrophe, depending on which version of Kayn you encounter, and which version of Kayn is currently in control. There are two versions. The question of which one wins is not yet settled. New here? Subscribe. Every week, a League of Legends story, told the way it deserves to be. Heard. Noxus sends children to war as a deliberate policy. Not as a desperate measure, not as the evidence of a military in collapse reaching for whatever is, available. As a strategic instrument, specifically under the conditions that Borum Darkwill authorized, and that the Ionian campaign applied with characteristic brutality, the logic was straightforward. Ionian warriors hesitated to kill people they perceived as innocent. Children, read as innocent. A child soldier in the front line of an assault created exactly the kind of hesitation that could be exploited by the regular forces attacking from the flanks. Kayn was one of those children. His first battle was also supposed to be his last, not because the plan included his survival, but because a child handed a sword and pushed into contact with people defending their homes, was cautious survival. Not expected to come back, he was logistics. He was the mechanism by which Ionian hesitation could be transformed into Ionian corpses. He did not die. What happened instead? The other child soldiers fell quickly, fled or were cut down, because they were children who had been given weapons and pushed into harm's way. Kayn dropped the sword. It was too heavy, not suited to what he was about to do, and picked up an orate from the ground. He attacked the Ionians, not with the clumsy overhead swings of an untrained child, but with the specific purposeful violence of someone who had already understood something about fighting that most adults take years to learn. That the goal is not to strike impressively, but tissimund, to hit the thing you are aiming at. He helped produce a massacre. Farmers, hunters, patients from what had been a healing facility. The Noxian regulars coming in from the flanks found the Ionians already in shock when they arrived. 2 days later, the Shadow Order came to see what had happened. The Shadow Order was not surveilling the massacre for intelligence purposes. They were following Zed's instinct, the same instinct that had built the Order from a single act of forbidden knowledge into the most effective covert force in Ionia. Something had happened in that field that Frole dist in veritas fapi was worth understanding. The reports did not explain it. What Zed found was a child. The regular forces had moved on. The survivors had fled or been taken. The field had the specific case or foretime quality of silence that battlefields have after the sound of what happened there has finally finished echoing. A silence that is made of everything that is no longer moving. In the middle of it, a child, lying in the mud, alive, holding the remains of an orate in hands that Portia's had not loosened their grip even after whatever injury had put him down. And when Zed Gulaz approached, the hands tightened instead of releasing, and the broken weapon came up, and the quere pea, child's eyes, which were the wrong eyes for the age of the face they were in, focused with the kind of attention that combat produces in people who have internalized it rather than learned it. There was nothing there that could have been taught in the time available. Zed extended his hand. The child took it. He brought Kayn into the Shadow Order as a student, which was what the tradition called combat anyone Zed chose. The tradition also said that students selected a single weapon and spent years mastering it. The discipline of depth over breadth, the philosophy that excellence in one thing produced a quality of understanding that cross-training could not. Kayn mastered everything, not one after another in careful sequence. All of them. The scythe, the blade, the staff, the bren. Specific techniques of the shadows that the Order's advanced practitioners used to move without being seen and strike without being anticipated. He moved through the curriculum the way certain students move through curricula, not by effort, but by a quality of absorption that made effort somewhat beside the point. By the time he was completing material that apprentices twice his age were still working through, the question of where his ceiling was had become genuinely rabulous, unclear. He also believed with a certainty that he did not moderate or question that he would surpass Zed. Not eventually. Not with time and maturity and the humility that real mastery tends to eventually produce. Now. Soon. He was already better. He just needed the right opportunity to demonstrate it. The other students in the Order could see it. Not the certainty. They could not read inside him. But the results. The way he moved through challenges that most of them were still struggling. Ye other stew with. The way the shadows responded to him with a fluency that usually took decades. He was not demonstrating to convince them. He was simply doing what he did, and what he did was at a Dinos Kisarath level that required acknowledgement. Zed acknowledged it. In the specific way that Zed acknowledged things, not with praise, which was not his mode, but with the increasingly demanding curriculum, with the harder assignments, with the particular quality of attention that a master brings to a student who has become genuinely interesting rather than simply promising. Kayn interpreted this as confirmation. He was not entirely wrong. He was also not entirely right. This belief was the most dangerous thing about him, not the skill. Skill is neutral, a tool, applicable to purposes. The certainty was the problem, because certainty of this specific kind tends to cause people to take opportunities they should decline, and to not ask the questions they should ask. When the mission came, he did not ask any questions. Darkin weapons had entered Ionia, artifacts of the Great Darkin War, weapons that were more than weapons, that carried within them the consciousness of ancient beings who had been imprisoned in the metal as the only available alternative to their continued existence as a threat to everything alive. They were dangerous in the way that things are dangerous when the danger is inside them rather than applied from outside. A Darkin weapon did not simply kill. It worked on the person wielding it over time in the direction of what the consciousness inside wanted, which was, without exception, liberation and a body capable of containing something that had once been a god. The Shadow Order students were tasked with finding these weapons and destroying them. Every other student who encountered Rast, the living scythe, the Darkin, did what the mission required. They destroyed it, or attempted to. Kayn kept it. He wanted it. He had looked at the scythe and understood what it was and decided that it was not a weapon to be neutralized, but a weapon to be used. That the right hands, with the right will, could control what lived inside it rather than being controlled by it. He believed this because he right hands believed his will was strong enough for anything. The certainty, again, expanding to cover a lies situation it should not have covered. The moment his fingers closed around the handle, Rost found him. Here is what Rost had been waiting for. Not a strong body, not a capable fighter. Something much more specific. Someone with enough self-belief to think they were doing the controlling. While Rost assessed the situation from inside and began the patient, long-term work of making that self-belief serve his own purposes. What followed was not a possession. Not yet. It was something more interesting and more dangerous. A negotiation between two things that both believed they were winning. Rost had spent a very long time waiting for the right vessel. He had criteria. He had patience. He had the specific advantage of something that existed outside ordinary time constraints. He could work slowly, incrementally, advancing his position in fractions that the person he was rocking on would not register as movement. He had done this before. He knew how it ended. Kayn had his certainty and his skill and the specific quality of will that had been present since the mud of that first battlefield. The same quality that had made his hands hold the broken weapon even after they should have let it go. He was not naive about what the scythe was. He did, not believe that the danger was not real. He believed he could handle it better than anyone else. Shabadabayar was ma benign who had ever tried. They are still negotiating. The outcome expresses differently depending on the day. Some days, Kayn moves through the buyer world as himself, the Shadow Order's finest, the student who outgrew his curriculum, the assassin who carries a Darkin weapon because he intends to use it rather than be used by it. The scythe follows where he points it. The power it provides is available to his direction. Other days the red is stronger. The edges blur between what Kayn wants and what Rost wants. The distinction between wielding the weapon and being wielded by it becomes less clear from men, the outside, and possibly less clear from the inside. He is still moving toward his original goal, to surpass Zed, to lead the Shadow Order, to be recognized as what he has believed he is since he was a child in a field who refused to put down the broken spear. He carries the scythe because he believes it will help him get there. He is not wrong that it has made him more powerful. He is not yet certain whether the power he has gained is his, or whether it is simply what Rost is willing to let him hold until the moment Kamedo Relach comes to take it back. That question is still open. It is, among all the things that matter in Ionia right now, one of the most important ones. If this story reached you, subscribe. Every week, the full lore of a League of Legends champion, told the way it deserves to be heard.